What's going on everyone and welcome to the channel. In this one we're going to be making honey chicken with the most crispiest batter and the most delicious honey glaze. I'm also going to run you through the science behind each individual ingredient and what they do to this dish to make it so good. Please sit back, relax and enjoy. Alright guys, let's start this off by placing a skillet onto our stovetop over a high heat and immediately add in a quarter of a cup or 15 grams of sesame seeds. With these, we just want to toast them off for roughly 1.5 to 2 minutes or until lightly golden, and whilst toasting these, make sure to mix them around frequently just so they don't burn. In toasting these, it's going to release the natural oils inside the seeds, which will then let off a stronger and more delicious nutty flavour. Once that's done, they can then be removed from the stovetop and carefully tipped into a clean bowl, which we will then pop aside and use these delicious seeds later on in the recipe. Moving forward, place a large saute pan or pot onto your stovetop and this time pour in 1 litre or 4 cups of canola or vegetable oil, which is going to be used for deep frying. We can then put this over a high heat and heat the oil to 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you don't have a thermometer, heat the oil until you notice it shimmering. In the meantime, here is 3 small chicken breasts, which is the equivalent to 550 grams or 1.2 pounds, and with these we want to lay them down flat, placing our hand on top to secure it in place, and slice through the center horizontally to open the chicken up, or for the correct term, which is the butterfly. Proceed by slicing the butterfly chicken in half to create 2 even-sized fillets or fillets, then rotate them 90 degrees and dice the chicken into even-sized pieces, and that is important as we want this to cook evenly. Anyway, once that's done, we can then pop this aside for the time being. Now to create our batter, grab a large mixing bowl and to this add in 3/4 of a cup or 105 grams of plain all-purpose flour, which is going to be the main coating, 1/4 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon or 45 grams of corn flour, which is going to create a really crispy batter, 3/4 of a teaspoon or 1.5 grams of baking powder, which is not baking soda, and this is going to increase the puffiness of the batter as well as lighten the texture. Continue by adding in half a teaspoon or 2.5 grams of sea salt flakes for a bit of seasoning, 3/4 of a cup or 180 milliliters of very cold soda water to create a really light, fluffy and crisp batter, 1 egg white which contains a lot of air bubbles and will expand during frying, creating even more crisp, and finally 1 tablespoon or 20 milliliters of canola oil, which will create a tighter, richer crust and also keep the batter closer to the chicken. Okay, so now that that's done, grab a whisk and give all of those ingredients a really good mix until completely smooth and no lumps at all, and once that's achieved, this can then be put aside for a sec. Now in another bowl to create the honey sauce, add in half a cup or 140 grams of runny honey, which is obviously going to be the main flavouring, 1.5 teaspoons or 7.5 milliliters of sesame oil to add a really fragrant nutty background, 1.5 teaspoons or 7.5 milliliters of apple cider vinegar for a slight acidic tangy flavour, half a cup or 125 milliliters of cold water, or if you have leftover soda water you can use that too, and this is just to thin down the sauce. Now grab your whisk again and mix the ingredients really well, making sure that the honey is completely combined with the other ingredients. Sometimes it can be a pain and break up, leaving little lumps, but with a good mixing, it will incorporate into the other ingredients. Now that that's mixed, add in 1 tablespoon or 16 grams of corn flour, which is going to help thicken the sauce once it gets hot, as well as half a teaspoon or 2.5 grams of sea salt flakes. And again, give the mixture a really good mix for those flavors to become friends and to eliminate any possible lumps caused by the corn flour, to which we can then pop aside. Alright, so now that everything is prepared, it's time to add the diced chicken into the batter, and using your hands, a spoon or some tongs, coat the chicken really well, ensuring no pieces are stuck together. Also, I want to clarify to the people that wonder why I wear gloves, and the reason is due to the fact that I work every day at a cafe and you have to wash your hands literally every minute or so. They become extremely sore, so I use them just to protect my hands. Anyway, without going off topic, once that's all coated, we can then make our way over to the hot oil that should be preheated to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or nicely shimmering if you don't have a thermometer. We can now proceed by very carefully adding in 1 piece of chicken at a time, which will prevent them from sticking together, and depending on the size of your pot or pan, you may have to do this in batches. If you do put too much in at once, they won't cook evenly and more than likely stick together, which will then tear the coating when pulled apart and no longer be crispy, so please do this in batches if so. Once you have all of the chicken you can fit in, allow this to fry away for 6 or 7 minutes, rotating each individual piece once you can see that they're golden brown on the opposite side. For me, this has now been 7 minutes and all of the chicken is beautifully golden brown and extremely crispy, which is exactly what we want, and that means we can then very carefully scoop out the chicken using a kitchen spider, slotted spoon or a pair of tongs, placing it onto a wire rack over a baking tray, or onto some kitchen cloth to drain. Now for the chicken, this can then be moved aside for a few minutes, as well as extremely carefully moving that hot oil to the back of the stovetop. Once that's out of the way, place a large wok or skillet onto your stovetop over a high heat, and using a ladle or a spoon, carefully transfer 1 tablespoon or 20 milliliters of hot oil into the wok or skillet, spreading it around, to which we can then add in 2 cloves of freshly minced garlic and saute for 45 seconds to release its fragrance and flavor. 45 seconds later, gently pour in the honey sauce mixture, giving it a really good mix together, and cook the sauce for 1.5 to 2 minutes, stirring it very frequently, just until the corn flour works its magic and thickens. During this, you'll notice the honey start to bubble on the edges. Just make sure to focus on mixing that, as we don't want the honey to burn. Alright, so now that our sauce is nice and thick and sticky, we can then add in all of that crispy, delicious chicken. Once that's all in, give this an extremely good mix, and it's then a good idea to be gentle at this stage, just so we don't damage our amazingly crispy batter. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if someone's going to comment that my wok's too small, but sometimes, friends, it's not about the size, it's how you use it. Okay, so now that that's well mixed, we can then introduce the toasted sesame seeds that we did earlier, and I personally don't add them all at this stage. I add some on right at the last minute just for a little fresh burst of flavour, but that's completely up to you. Once they've been added, give the chicken another really good mix, ensuring everything is completely distributed evenly, before we can then remove this from the stovetop and place this amazing honey chicken into our serving bowls. There's now one really important step left to do, which is to grab a piece of this extremely crispy and sticky chicken, and we can then dig in. So that's it for honey chicken. This recipe right here serves 2 people and can easily be doubled, tripled and so on. And as for storage, I don't really recommend you put it in the fridge or freezer, just because that batter won't be as good as when we first made it. It will just become a little bit soggy. If you do want to store it though, it can be placed in the fridge in an airtight container for up to 2 days. Or it can be placed in the freezer in an airtight container for up to 2 months. When it comes to reheating, just place it back in a pan over a medium heat and heat it up nice and gently, but like I said before, it won't be as good as when we first made it. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I was able to teach you something. If you did, be sure to smash that like button and consider subscribing, along with hitting that bell notification next to it so you never miss one I upload. Thanks for watching everyone, stay safe and enjoy.